Hey everybody, J-Hal here, and in this video we are going to cover Demon Hunter gear optimization. Now, there's a couple of different builds out there, whether it's fire, whether it's cold, whether it's a lightning build. You know, there's going to be a few basic principles that you're going to follow. Now, some of the things can be optimized a little bit different, but in this video we're going to go over pretty much the streamlined way to go with most of your gear, although some of it can be edited according to whatever stats you might have on your gear, how many Paragon points you have, or what build you're running. Now, for a weapon, here we have an Atreyu. Obviously, the cold damage comes on there by default. Having extra 10% increased damage, dexterity, and a socket, which you can get that socket by using the Ramaladni's gift, otherwise known as gifting it. You can add that socket on there and be able to run your main skills. If you're running a Crider shot, the same basic principles apply, although this one is kind of an old school one. We didn't have that when the gift was around. The other is the Arcane Barb, having dexterity, 10% increased damage. And then if you have something like that that doesn't have one of these extra fourth skills that's there by default, resource cost reduction. Resource cost reduction is huge in 2.1.2. So having those three, dexterity, resource cost reduction, damage, and a socket, is going to take you a very long way into 2.1.2. Now, sentries don't sit around and do all the damage, so you actually have to make sure that you have the resources to be able to make that happen. For the gloves, no longer are you necessarily looking for the trifecta, otherwise known as crit hit damage, crit hit chance, and increased attack speed. Now, we haven't found a better pair just yet, but the main stats that you will look for is having your main stat with dexterity, crit hit damage, crit hit chance, and then instead of cooldown reduction or increased attack speed, you're actually going to look for resource cost reduction again. Again, resource cost reduction is going to be your main theme here as far as being able to maximize the potential of your build. So dexterity, crit hit damage, crit hit chance, and resource cost reduction will take you a long way. Next up is the shoulders. And again, the same basic principles are going to apply. Dexterity, vitality, and resource cost reduction are pretty much going to be across the board for most builds. Having those three is important. Now, depending on what build you're running or how much, toughness you have, you might opt to go, instead of sentry damage, you might opt to go with a life percentage. That's going to be up to you. I still find that having that extra damage coming from the sentry, which this can roll up to 15%, we're just running short on resources to be able to roll that. But having that extra damage there can go quite a ways. Like I said, you could go life percentage there, but if you're trying to go as high as you possibly can, then you got to rely on a little bit of luck and a lot of damage. Next, for your helmet, dexterity, crit hit chance, and we're rolling cluster arrow damage here because that's where most of our damage is coming from with the build that we're running. And then a socket. Now, the socket obviously would have a cooldown reduction gem in it so that we can get our preparation, our companion, and our sentries around a little bit quicker. Now, if you don't like that and you're running with something like a Pride's Fall, you can easily roll dexterity, vitality, crit hit chance on a socket, or if you want to roll the crit hit chance over to cluster arrow damage, that's fine. It's going to depend on where your crit hit chance lies, which ours is at 50%, which is a very good number to have. You can go higher, you can go a little bit lower if you want. Somewhere in that 45 to 50% range is going to be just fine. So there's a couple options you can go there with your helmet. You can either go with something like this if you have high vitality. It's going to be up to you, but for the most part, dexterity, crit hit chance, cluster arrow damage, and the socket is going to take you a long way. For your chest piece, now chest piece again is going to be something you can do a little different. Dexterity, vitality, sentry damage, and 3 sockets is still generally the way to go to be able to get that extra damage out. And again, sentries aren't as strong as they used to be, so if you find it absolutely necessary, you can change that out. You can go with a couple different things. And again, different builds are going to call for different optimizations, but this is pretty much going to take you across the board. If you're running a fire build and you have the center coat, fire skill damage is going to be on there no matter what. Dexterity and then sentry damage if you want that on there, and then 3 sockets. Or you can go with fire skill damage, dexterity, and instead of sentry damage, you can roll vitality on there. That's going to be up to you. Sometimes vitality might be a little bit better than that extra sentry damage if you need to stay alive. So that's going to be the main thing. But dexterity, vitality, sentry damage, and 3 sockets is pretty much how you're going to do this. All resist can be in there as well if you want to go with the trifecta there. If Dexterity, Vitality, and All Resist is another strong way to go. Keep in mind that if you do have a resistance in your secondary stat, you won't be able to roll All Resist on there. You'll only be able to roll Armor. If that's the case, you're better off going with Sentry Damage or something else. Armor is not going to do a whole lot for you. You're going to be getting a lot of armor from your Dexterity, and you're just going to lose a little bit of damage. Your gains aren't going to be as great. For your pants, now this is going to be pretty much straight across the board for pretty much all builds. Dexterity, Vitality, Resistances, and Sockets. Now that's all very important. That's pretty much going to be the standard. Now your secondaries obviously can roll a little better, but that's across the board. Dexterity, Vitality, All Resist, and Sockets. For your boots, again, if depending on where certain stats are rolled, you might be able to get away with different stuff. In this one, we have armor on there where we don't necessarily need armor or want armor on this, but Dexterity, Vitality, and then cluster arrow damage. That's also another place that we're rolling the skill damage. Very important to have it there. As you can see, we have lightning in our secondary, so that's where our resistance is. So a couple of ways to go there. And unfortunately, we haven't found a better pair of boots yet, so we're going to continue to roll these. Your cluster arrow damage can roll up to 15%. Like I said, we're just starting to run short on resources. Now, for your bracers. Now, this isn't the conventional way. I have an ancient pair here of some steady strikers. Now, you can easily go with Reaper's Wraps, which is vital for most builds to be able to get your resources back. Having that, having either 20% of a skill damage, whether it be fire or cold, Dexterity, Vitality, and then 6% crit hit chance. That's pretty much how you're going to roll your bracers. So if you have those around, roll that. Elemental damage, whatever skill damage or elemental damage that you're using, Dexterity, Vitality, and crit hit chance. Now if you're using something like a Steady Striker, which I've been using for a lot of my builds, the elemental damage, Dexterity, attack speed, and then crit hit chance. I've been running that, and I like that a lot. And there's a couple other things. Lacuni Prowlers might get you by, and that's going to depend on what you're playing with and how you're playing. For me, this is what's working for me, and we've kind of gone over both ways to do that for both sets of bracers. Now, for your offhand, Dexterity, attack speed, crit hit chance, resource cost reduction, and skill damage. We hit all of them. Unfortunately, our rolls aren't the best, but we hit all of them. Dexterity. Now, if you don't have resource cost reduction and you're struggling there, that's a good place to have Vitality in its place. But if you're looking for all of them, Dexterity, attack speed, crit hit chance, resource cost reduction, and the skill damage of cluster arrow damage. You don't want to roll sentry damage here anymore. You want to roll cluster arrow damage. That's where everything's going to come from. If you have any other type of quiver, it's pretty much going to be the same way across the board. Having all those is very nice to have around. For a belt, we have a Witching Hour here. Now obviously a Witching Hour can roll a lot better than this. We have Dexterity, All Resist, increased attack speed, and crit hit damage. Now crit hit damage, increased attack speed is going to be on there every time. Having Dexterity on there, we rolled this. It was a terrible roll. If you have something, if you just want to craft something, having it set up like this could work. Dexterity, Vitality, All Resist, and Life Percentage, that gives a huge boost to our toughness there, as you can see. If you don't want to roll Life Percentage, I would recommend All Resist over Life Percentage most of the time. You can roll something like Evasive Fire damage or any type of main stat damage that you could roll on there. I don't know if I would necessarily go with that. You're going to be trying to shoot as many cluster arrows off as you can, so you could easily go something like this for the extra toughness. For your rings, Ring of Royal Grandeur, hopefully you can get a better one than this. Crit hit damage and Dexterity and a socket are all very important. Instead of having attack speed, crit hit chance would be great there. If you do get Vitality, that's another way to go. Increased attack speed isn't necessarily a stat that everybody's looking for right now, but that's what we have on here, and we haven't really gotten anything better, so we're going to leave that as is. Crit hit damage, Dexterity, socket, and then crit hit chance after that is generally going to be the way to go. For the other ring, now this one I have one where I can roll 5 stats on it. We're using this because we're using the 2-piece bonus there. I don't recommend this for everybody. It just works with the gear that I have. Dexterity, crit hit chance, socket, those are the same for the rings. If you have something like a Stone of Jordan, Unfortunately, this one is a lightning damage, having the skill or the elemental damage, dexterity. The damage against elites in a socket is very good. If you have a unity, same principles apply. Main stat, dexterity, crit hit chance or crit hit damage, socket, and if you need to get another stat, that's fine. For your amulet, and again, this is going to be pretty much across the board, although an elemental damage or some type of modification does work really well for certain builds and for certain playstyles. Dexterity, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and a socket goes really well. If you have something like a Zephyrian amulet or something like that you might swap out to be able to mitigate some damage, that's a great alternative. It's just going to depend on what you have laying around and how you want to combine everything. Now, you saw a couple different gems that we're running with. This should be a Bane of the Trapped. We were playing with something else. So Bane of the Trapped, Zai's Stone of Vengeance, and a Bane of the Powerful is a really good way to go. Ignore the Gogok and put a Bane of the Trapped there. So that's it as far as gear optimization goes. I'm going to go back and put everything back into where I had it. But as far as all that goes, again, I'm not stating this is for everybody. I'm not stating this is for every build. It's for most builds and probably for most people in terms of how you're going to gear up your character and how you want to optimize them. So that's it. That is pretty much all I can tell you as far as how you want to gear it. Now, for your Paragon points, we'll go over that. You want to max your movement speed, and this is one other step you can take. You want to max your movement speed in conjunction with your gear. The 2-piece bonus from your companions gives you 10% movement speed by default. So go ahead and put some points in there, and you can shift click to add 10 points at a time. Now, for some builds, you're going to run max hatred, and if you don't have enough points, then that's fine. Everything else will go into dexterity after that. For some builds, you might just go max movement speed and then everything into dexterity. That's going to be up to you. Most builds are probably running max hatred right now. Some are, some aren't. For your offense, cooldown reduction is always going to be first so that you can get preparation quicker. Your sentries will come around quicker. Your companion will come around quicker. That's all very important to be able to get that up to maximize. You want to have hatred up as much as possible, and you want to have your sentries coming around as quick as possible. Your next stat is going to be crit hit damage. And depending on, again, how high your crit hit chance already is versus, all the different stuff that you can go, you could easily go crit hit chance next. If you like playing the slow build, if you want a little bit of attack speed, you can go that way next. I'm going to let you make up your decision on what works best for you. I generally tend to lead more towards attack speed, especially if I have high crit hit chance. And that's going to be the way I go, but crit hit chance will normally win out there. Now, for your defense, resist all is always going to be first. For a Demon Hunter, you'll get armor from your dexterity, so you don't need that as much. So you can go that second. I prefer life regen. I know a lot of people will go life first, and that's going to be up to you, but I'm going to go with life regen, and then everything after that will go into life. For your utility, life on hit, very important to always have first. Resource cost reduction after that, and then your points can go into area damage, and then just for a bonus you can go with gold fine after that. So that's pretty much how we're setting it up. So hopefully this helps you guys get a little bit more clarity as far as how you want to gear your character, how you want to enchant, what stats to look out for. Like I said, this isn't always going to be the way. It's going to vary for different people, it's going to vary for different builds, and it's going to vary depending on what stats you have on your gear when you get it. So keep that in mind, but this is pretty much a good start to gearing your character. So if you guys do have any questions, definitely leave those in the comments below, or if you have any feedback as far as what might be working for you in regards to gear optimization or something you might see different, feel free to leave that in the comments below as well. If this did help you and you liked the video, feel free to hit that like button because that's always appreciated. And we're going to be doing a lot more videos, so if you haven't subscribed already and you are interested in subscribing, be sure and do that as well. Lots more Diablo to come. I appreciate you guys watching as always. Happy hunting. We'll see you next time.